Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Welcome to day 9 of Teaser season for patch 3.27, the Keepers of the Flame expansion. In less than 24 hours time, we have the big reveal. This is going to be where Grinding Gear Games go through some major content reveals. So far, all we've had have been quality of life changes. Now, quality of life changes are always significant, and some of them do hide hints at potential balance changes, potential other content changes. Today, we're going to be talking about the rest of these quality of life changes. Maybe not absolutely every single one that's going to be in the patch, but the ones that Grinding Gear Games considered significant. Some of these are really, really big too. Some of these are absolutely fantastic, whereas others are much more niche.
Alteration crafting is now more streamlined. When using Orbs of Alteration, you can now hold Alt, or the gamepad equivalent, to swap to using an Orb of Augmentation if one is available.
Right, so that's an overt teaser. Let's have a look for anything covert in this one as well, because there's a couple of things that stand out as a bit odd. There's 2 sockets that are missing gems, they're pretty minor. There might be a reason for that, or it might just be the case that certain gems weren't available on whatever Grinding Gear Games' internal test realm was, and they may have just copied a live character across for this. However, the thing that's really interesting here is these 2 additional item slots. We don't know anything about what these are going to do. They're probably somehow tied to the new League mechanic, the Keepers of the Hive mechanic, but we don't know what they're going to be, and that's something I guess we'll find out. My personal expectation here is that this is some sort of borrowed power mechanic, but I'm very much not certain that that is the case. Also, one thing that we'll get asked for sure is, what is this slot? This is a slot that is unlocked through heisting and that is only relevant for heisting. There's also this gold amount here. Pay attention to this, it will change. Right, so covert teasers out of the way, let's talk about the overt one here. This is a quality of life change for alteration spamming. This is going to be something that makes things a little bit faster, but ultimately this is one of the smaller changes that's being made here. Ultimately, this is going to be a huge improvement when you are rolling flasks more than anything else. It's not something that's going to be utterly transformative when it comes to alteration spamming of normal items, mostly because that requires a lot more alteration orbs and a lot less augmentation orbs, but it will definitely be an improvement there. It's pretty minor. When it comes to bulk rolling of flasks, though, this is going to be absolutely huge. What's the likely effect for those of you that play in Trade League? I think this is going to attack the margins for flask rolling, because more people will do it because one of the barriers to doing it's been removed. What happens when more people get into flask rolling? The profits you get from flask rolling are going to decrease due to increased competition, and at the same time, the reagents these players consume, which is alteration orbs primarily, enkindling orbs secondarily, and also in some cases over-quality flask bases, which are pretty rare, these things are going to go up in price, the prices of finished products are likely to go down, and the margins for doing this are likely to go down as well. Other spots I can see this being significant is the markets for premium fractured items. This is going to make it feel a little bit less toxic to get that premium mod onto an item that you then attempt to fracture onto it. And so we might see more people getting involved in fracturing. Similar things would happen there. Alterations will go up in price, fracturing orbs will go up in price, and the results that you get from it will come down in price a little bit. All in all, though, this is looking like really good stuff for certain niches, and something that no one's going to mind at all.
When opening Blight Chests, you will now open all other Blight Chests nearby.
That's a very simple, very welcome change. Nothing much really to say here. It's just going to make things a lot better. It's going to make blights faster to clean up afterwards, and I assume this is going to apply in blighted maps and blight ravage maps as well. Whatever the case, this is pulling me towards running blight, because blight is going to be more enjoyable as a result. Now, it's important to note that Abyss of Edifice is probably not going to exist in its current form in the next league. That's been my expectation, really, since the Abyss of Edifice Scarab farms took over the economy of 3.26. So we'll see exactly what happens there, but I am not expecting that Scarab to remain. If it was going to remain, I feel I would have called out that the same tech was applied to Abyss here.
Rog's disenchanting services can now be accessed from towns and hideouts.
So this is an absolutely phenomenal change, and also, has anyone noticed that ridiculously large amount of gold there? The amount of gold this character's got just keeps changing all the time, and there's probably some sort of code to it, but I am not seeing any code there. There probably is a code, it's just that it's not apparent to me what it is. Also, because I know people are going to ask about this, what's up with the void stones in the bottom left corner of the inventory? What's likely happened here is that this character has migrated or potentially been copied from the live realm onto a Grinding Gear Games test realm or something along those sorts of lines. And what happens in certain circumstances is that Kirac will give you your void stones if you're missing them. So I think that that's what's happened here. Kirac has just had a quest over his head, and in order to make Kirac no longer nag Mark, he's gone and talked to Kirac, picked up all the Void Stones, and then just socketed them there. Alternately, this could be a teaser to clarify that there's no changes to the Voidstone system coming, but we kind of already expected that once we got an overview of the Atlas, and we could see that certain key clusters that were linked to the Searing Exarch, the Eater of Worlds, the Maven, and the like, that they were still all in place where they used to be. But yeah, the idea of disenchanting from the hideout rather than Kingsmarch, this is absolutely phenomenal. This was the single reason I went to Kingsmarch most often, and not having to go through an extra zone transition or two every time is a massive, massive, massive improvement. Of course, if you're wanting to run Kingsmarch mappers to their maximum, then you are going to need to go there more often than once every couple of days. But as I see it now, even if you are engaging heavily with the Settlers integration into the core game, you're not going to need to go to Kingsmarch very often now.
Kirac missions now have a handy icon to show at a glance what kind of mission they are.
This one was a player suggestion, and there's also a couple of weird things with this one. Let's start with the weirdness. I don't know whether this is an intentional teaser or whether something has just gone a little bit wrong with their implementation here for this video, but notice that we have 6 options when it comes to white tier maps. 0 options for yellow, 0 for red. However, the player has 1 white tier mission, 4 yellow tier, and 40-something red tier. Now, ordinarily, you would expect to have the number 6, and then have another comparable number for yellow and red. Might be 6, might be 8, might be 10. It's not likely to be more than that unless you've used a comprehensive scouting report, in which case it'll be 16, 16, 16. There's been some speculation. I don't believe this to be true, but it is definitely speculation out there. Some people think that maybe now Kirac only resets his missions when you re-roll them with a scouting report. And unless and until you do that, you keep just using one of them at a time. That's some speculation that's going around. I'm not sure whether that's the case or whether this video was recorded before this system was fully perfected. So we'll likely see that when we get either the patch notes or alternately when standard players log in and experience the new Kirac in 3.27. As for the actual change itself, let's talk about what this is going to mean both for Trade League players and for solo self-found players. For Trade League players, I think this is pretty much a nothing burger. The reason for this, there were some overhauls that were made to Kirac missions in red tier maps that took place in 3.26, and even though those encounters were buffed substantially, it wasn't enough to make them good. So most people are mostly disregarding Kirac. I don't see that changing just because of this quality of life improvement. But if you're a solo self-found player, there might occasionally be missions that you look at and say, hey, you know what? I'm blocking the scarabs that are associated with this mechanic, but there's a couple of small things that I want out of it. So I'm just going to dabble into that mechanic through the use of a Kirac mission. For example, maybe you just require 1 Murderous Eye Jewel to make your build work. Well, you can do 1 Abyss mission and then get your Murderous Eye Jewel from that. And that's something I could see people who are playing in solo self-found occasionally doing. So they'll just have Kirac as their primary source for a mechanic they've got no interest in farming and they're interested in blocking entirely, but they just want small amounts of it. For me, as a Trade League player, if there's a particular Murderous Eye Jewel that I want, and I'm not interested in running Abyss, I'll either trade for a Murderous Eye Jewel base and then roll it, or I'll trade for a finished item instead. But for an SSF player, I can definitely see some niche uses for this here, particularly when it comes to stuff like Harbingers that you don't get unless you spec into them.
Vaal Orbs can now be used on monsters encased in essences, to the same effect that Remnants of Corruption have. Remnants of Corruption will no longer be obtainable, but any existing ones will still function as before.
Right, so now we get to something that is unquestioned quality of life and just an improvement for Trade League players, and that solo self-found players are mixed about. This is the changes that are taking place to Essences and Vaal Orbs. This is a Path of Exile 2 mechanic that's being imported to Path of Exile 1. Now, if you play solidly at endgame and you map Searing Exarch aligned for even a short period of time, you'll have more Vaal Orbs than you know what to do with. However, there is definitely a progression period where you are short on Vaal Orbs. This is when you're trying to break into red maps, and particularly when you get later on your pathway breaking into red maps. You're using one on every map that you run that's an Atlas +1, and you're just not recovering that number from monster loot. Well, guess what? Now you're going to have additional pressure on Vaal Orbs at this period, because any Essence encounter that you hit that's worth corrupting, you're going to want to have a Vaal Orb for it. Now this goes with something that was earlier seen, some changes that were being made to the Atlas, where a couple of Essence small nodes were noticed to be missing, and those were ones that related to Remnants of Corruption. So a lot of people had thought that this Path of Exile 2 tech would be brought into Path of Exile 1, and they ended up being correct. So Net winners of this, people who play in Trade League and engage with the Essence system, this is going to be a net win for you. Also, people who map Searing Exarch aligned in Trade League, this is going to be a win for you. Net losers for this will be people who play in SSF, do not map Searing Exarch aligned, or just really dislike the Searing Exarch mechanics, and want to use essences at various points in their progression. This is one of those ones that I think is a perfectly good game balance change, but it's more game balance than quality of life, but it is something that's going to mean less rubbish kept in your inventory. Even though it seems like this doesn't free up an inventory slot, chances are you will find a Vaal Orb in a good quarter of the maps that you're running, whereas you're not going to find Remnants of Corruption anywhere near that often, and so it is effectively going to free up an inventory slot a lot of the time.
You'll also no longer need to purchase bestiary orbs, and you can itemize beasts for free from your bestiary. Just control-click on a captured beast to automatically itemize it. Happy hunting!
Right, it's hard to convey how massive this is going to be, especially if we're right about asynchronous trading coming in 3.27. The 3.26 status quo when it comes to beast crafting is absolutely terrible. If you want to trade for a large number of beasts, you can do that pretty smoothly on one of the trade discords. However, if you want to trade for a small number of beasts, you'll see when you go to the trade discords that people are saying, I'm selling my Phenomenal Plague Narachnid, that's the split beast, at XYZ price, minimum quantity 25. They're not interested in dealing in small trades. So you then go to the Grinding Gear Games provider trade system and you search for Phenomenal Plague Narachnids and you'll see someone that is listing 100 of them. You'll send them a tell saying, I want to buy this particular beast, and they will say via auto reply, yep, I'm only selling them if you're interested in buying 40 or more of them. And then you realize just how bad it is to try and trade for single copies of beasts. Now, if you're doing serious crafting, you're fine with buying them in massive bulk, but if you're not, then it's a real hassle. And the real problem is that currently, a lot of the beast crafting recipes that are not super meta, but that are genuinely useful, they're ones that you probably only want to do once or twice, but you're good luck finding the beast unless you're willing to buy 20 of it at a time. So, in comes Keepers of the Flame. Assuming that we get asynchronous trade, you're going to now be able to just simply pick up that one beastcraft, remove prefix, add suffix, or one of the other ones that's very powerful but not constantly being used, and you can then just go and use it. That's probably the biggest part of this change, but then on top of that, you also pay 1 chaos less per beast because the person selling them to you is not having to itemize them at a cost of 1 chaos, and of course, more people are going to itemize their beasts because that additional friction that was probably originally intended as a Chaos Orb sink but just ended up really, really annoying people, that is now gone. So this is going to be absolutely fantastic. You'll be able to bottle up all your beasts, sell the popular red beasts in bulk or singletons depending on who's going to pay more, and you'll also be able to sell the niche useful beasts without some of the difficulties that are associated with doing that today. All in all, this is a massive, massive, massive quality of life improvement for beast farming, and it's something that is pulling me in the direction of being excited to play a beast farmer.
You can now click this button here to level up all gems that are ready to level up in a single click.
Right, so this one's going to be fairly impactful as well, mostly as just a click saver. This is going to be at its absolute best when you put a whole bunch of new gems into a setup in order to level them. So if you put them in your offhand, and then it's just going to be a small number of clicks that are required in order to send them all up to new gem levels. The other thing is that we had some mysterious lock icons over gems in the past, and this undoubtedly is associated with that new mechanic. So you can opt into locking a gem. We've seen a fair bit of evidence for this in previous teaser videos, and that will prevent them from being accidentally leveled, because there are plenty of times where you would make a deliberate strategic decision not to level a gem beyond a certain level. One classic example is Molten Shell. Molten Shell does improve with gem level, but it doesn't improve by very much, and certain level milestones increase its mana cost, which can sometimes be worse than the amount of benefit that you gain out of the gem leveling up. On top of this, cast when damage taken is another very good reason why you might deliberately elect not to level your Molten Shell gem beyond certain points. So if your Molten Shells and other similar gems, you lock those. For other gems that you want to hit 20 on, well, you just use this button and save yourself a number of clicks.
Keep an eye on the upcoming news leading up to the livestream for Keepers of the Flame.
And then we just had some final words from Mark there that don't really add anything much more. So that is the changes that we're getting from a quality of life perspective. There will, of course, be a bunch of game balance changes. Those will be clarified tomorrow. I'm definitely hoping to see a meta shakeup. Some ascendancies that are currently not very good getting boosts to be good. Some that are oppressively good getting nerfs so that other things can shine. We'll see exactly where that all ends up. Now, let's revisit a question that came up yesterday. Yesterday, we did some discussion of the Spectre changes Grandiga Games announced. Now, these were pitched as a quality of life change, but looking behind the lines, a lot of us thought at the time, and it wasn't just me, it was pretty much every single individual on Reddit that I looked at, a lot of us thought that this was going to also result in a massive overhaul of the way that Spectres work. However, there has been some very determined sleuthing since then, and people have realized that there was another explanation that was possible. Someone's confirmed that the Spectres that are shown in this video definitely have the effect of Discipline Aura on them, and it's possible there's another aura that's affected by an invisibility MTX. Now, if the player is giving one or multiple auras to their Spectres through the use of generosity support, that would also explain everything that we saw in yesterday's video without Spectres now reserving mana. So I thought I'd bring that up there as a probable correction to yesterday's video. Not 100% certain what it actually is, whether it is going to be the Spectre overhaul that we thought it was going to be yesterday, or whether those sleuths are completely right and Spectres still work the same way that they do fundamentally in 326, except for the quality of life aspects that were discussed yesterday. That, however, is one that we will find out for certain when it comes to tomorrow and the full live stream reveal. I will see you all for that. May your Vaal Orbs corrupt your essences in interesting ways.